Hi guys, it's the 1st of August 2017 and it's almost 11 o'clock in the morning. I realise it's been it's been more than a year since I've posted a video to my wild camping channel, and that's because largely life has been interfering with my outdoor pursuits for the last year. But I haven't been lax. I've had a number of projects ongoing in order to get to the end of my main project that I've been dealing with, which is the building of a skin-on frame canoe. And I'm largely making this video for a couple of my mates who are curious about how this process works. So a little bit of a backstory first. And that is that I've pretty much been researching canoe building since I first came online in about 1995 and collected an enormous amount of information on kayak building and canoe building from around the world and all the different types and styles. And about 10 years ago, I actually ended up accidentally being hired to work for a kayak building company. They did handmade fiberglass kayaks here in Napier, New Zealand, which largely ended up being sent to Northern Europe for the tourist industry, mainly Norway. So they were high-end product, very expensive to buy. A two-man canoe was worth about $6,500 New Zealand dollars, which I'm not sure what that equates to in euros, but they were really good quality. So I worked for them for about a year, learned everything about handmade fiberglass kayak building. And one of the deals there was, I actually worked there just short of a year. One of the deals was at the end of your first year for working for them, instead of the company paying you a bonus at the end of the year, you were allowed to build yourself any one of them kayak models on the weekend when you weren't working. But I never made it to my year, so I never got to build myself one of their fiberglass kayaks. They didn't do canoes, they only did kayaks, covered kayaks. And so I have been hanging out to build my own kayak for a long time, and then after watching a number of Canadian videos on YouTube which showed canoeing in Canada is obviously a big deal, I decided I wanted to build myself a canoe, an open top canoe, and eventually a few months ago settled for building a prospector style skin on frame open top canoe. So I think I started this project about maybe 3 months ago, and I've just kind of been at the beginning of winter, and I've just kind of been mucking about with getting the frame that you need, building the frame that you need that the canoe gets built on top of, which is like the mold for the canoe. So I've used as my basis for this project an old Popular Mechanics magazine plan. Popular Mechanics did published a number of plans for home canoe building, and I think this one was in the 1930s was published. So I've copied the plan and converted it into a skin-on frame instead of a cedar and canvas style canoe. So it's taken a bit of mucking around to convert the measurements from imperial to metric, and to change some of the details of the plan to accommodate a skin-on frame instead of a cedar and canvas shell. So I'll give you a quick look at the kind of basic diagram of what the canoe looks like now. So in this diagram, I've taken the pictures from the magazine, cleaned them up, and stuck them all into one page in Microsoft Paintbrush, whereas they were all separate little diagrams on several different pages of the Popular Mechanics magazine. And so this is kind of what the original plan looked like, and it's a little bit different than the standard process for building a canoe on a mold like this. But I like it because it's a simpler, cheaper way of dealing with the situation. And I think that the actual shape of the canoe is slightly better than the standard version. Managing this project now for about 3 months over winter. So we're at the coldest part of our winter now, and that means we're just about coming to the end of winter, beginning of August. We've got about another month of rain and sort of cold for New Zealand. It's not seriously cold. We had our first -degree Celsius weather a couple of days ago, yesterday on the way to work. So I'm building this in the back room of my flat, which I've emptied out because it's the biggest room in my flat, well, sort of the biggest room, and it's about 18 or 19 feet from one corner of the room to the other on a diagonal, and the canoe I'm building is a 16-foot prospector style canoe. 16 feet is considered the longest length of this type of canoe that is handleable to paddle by a single individual, and it will accommodate 2 people and a whole bunch of gear. So basically I've picked the maximum size. So the frame will pretty much fill this room, and I'm praying that the calculations that I've done for getting this thing out of the room were accurate enough to work. Otherwise, once the frame's done, before I put the skin on, I'm going to have to cut the whole thing in half, get it outside, and then glue it all back together again, and then put the skin on it. But I think I'll be able to get it out of here in one piece. So once I've finished the frame, before I put the fabric on the outside, the skin on the outside, I will have a go at getting it out, and then if I can't, I'm going to have to cut it in half. So this is what the frame looks like now. It's almost all complete, so the next stage is actually starting to build the frame of the canoe. So this is what the mold looks like. The mold is almost totally complete, and I'm going to show you now what all the little bits of it look like as well. So that is the front end, and you can see that curved bit of wood on the end there. That's called a stem, and that's basically the front nose of the canoe. And then each of these things here are called stations, and so the canoe is symmetrical front to back and side to side. So what you do is, I'll just give you a quick look of what all the stations look like. That's the back end, that curved bit down the end there. So this is the number 2 station right here. And you can see it's basically 2 boards, 1, 2, which are the same shape. And then they're joined together by this cleat here, which has 4 bolts. There's a plate at the front and another one round behind the back, and then you bolt the corners, and then that builds one whole station. So that's like a cross section through the canoe. And then I've put that 90-degree angle bit there in order to allow the station to be clamped to what's called the strong back, or the backbone of the frame, which is this board running along the bottom here. So that those 90-degree parts tie down here to stop the station from flopping back and forth. You don't actually need them, because once the stringers are attached, they hold all those up, but I just wanted to add those 90-degree bits myself. So then what happens is, because the boat is symmetrical back and front, you can see here, that's the #1 station at the back of the boat. And then if we go along to the front of the boat, there's another identical one here. And because these two sides are the same shape and you just cleat them together, you make two and cleat them together, basically what that means is each one of the stations, that one, that one, that one, you need 4 of these side shapes, of these single side shapes here. So 2 for the front and then 2 for the back here. Except for the middle station, which is this one here, the #4, there's only 2 sides, because this is not repeated. This is like the dividing line down the middle. You can also see here this plank along the bottom runs from one end completely the way through the other, and all the stations sit on top of it. That plank is called the strong back or the backbone. With most ways of building these canoes, that strong back is a different shape and it's actually bolted down to its own table. But I made my own sort of little bench table with little trolley wheels, which you can see underneath. So just so that I can move the whole mold around a little bit while I'm working on it, because it's a bit of a squeeze here on the end. So the initial cost of building all this, I've still got to calculate yet, but it actually wasn't that expensive. And I have made these stations out of 18mm MDF. And I think the planks of MDF are 150 wide by 18 or 100 millimeters long or something like that. So I've had to buy probably 3 or 4 of those planks to make enough of those stations. So this is the bit that's taken me the longest part, and I think it's probably going to end up being the most expensive part of the wooden part. But once you've made the mold once, you can make multiple canoes after that, and you don't have to remake the mold again. The rest of it is relatively simple. So now we can see the bit that I'm actually doing at the moment is that there are beads of timber, which are these things here. These are 12mm square rods, beading, that run the full length of the frame, full length of the mold. And you can see I've just got a stack of them sitting here getting ready to be attached to the frame, and they're called the stringers, and they run from the front stem, those curved bits at the front, all the way down to the back stem, and they attach on angles around the stem. So in order for them to all be spaced properly, the original plan had the equivalent of 5 stems per side, but I've added an extra one, so there's 6 per side, just to make it a little bit stronger, because the type of build this is different. So then what happens is, on each station there are 6 of these little holes, and I've put these are actually skewers, like for kebabs, bamboo skewers. And then what happens is, when the stringers go along, they fit inside those little skewers, and then they're tied down through that hole to hold that hard against there. And there's one of those on each station for each stringer. So I'm just in the process of finishing those now. You can see this one I've drilled the holes, but I haven't put the little pegs in. and on the end ones I haven't even drilled the holes yet. So they are all just simply equally spaced apart. You just have to measure the distance from the center, which is that little line there, all the way around to where the gunnel goes here, and then just using simple math, just divide that distance into equal distances, measure them out, and then that's where your stringers will sit. And then you can see here at the bottom there's a chunk cut out of each station. There's another one here and another one here, and what they are is the slots for the gunnels, and the gunnels are the thick hunk of wood that runs along the rim of the shell. When you're sitting in the canoe, it's kind of like the bit that you'll put your hand on the side of the canoe. So that is the gunnels are almost inch square beading, and they get basically put on the same way, but because they're so thick they have to be steamed, because at the very ends of the boat they actually bend quite a bit to meet the top of the stems. So this is just to let you know where I've got with the project. I'm going to make some more videos on the building part, especially once you can actually see the shape of the canoe coming together. And I'm going to start discussing the costs, how long it's taken me to do everything, the different types of timber that I'm buying to build out of, and then all the little details about how everything's tied together, glued together, bolted together, and all that kind of thing. So that hopefully by the end of the video there'll be enough information here for you to do the same thing if you like. And I will eventually have video where I will put a link in the description section down the bottom, not on this video but on a future one, where I actually provide a copy of the whole plan for the canoe and some instruction as well about how to put the canoe together. So that's just really an update for the channel, to let you know that even though I haven't posted for a year, I haven't been mucking around. I've been doing some other things as well, building and buying some new equipment which is going to be specifically to use for my canoeing stuff. I'm going to change the title of my channel now from Wild Camping to Wild Camping in Water, because once the canoe's finished there are going to be a lot of videos on me paddling a lot, and it'll be paddling and camping. One of the reasons why I've decided to do this, apart from the fact that I just for a long time wanted to build my own kayak or canoe and paddle it, is that I live in a place in New Zealand which is a huge old floodplain called the Hiratonga Plains, and there are sort of 5 major rivers which flow down onto this floodplain and which meet the coast very close to where I live. So there are a lot of waterways here within a very short drive of where I live, and they're all navigable by canoe at the right times of year. A lot of them are braided rivers, but further upstream they are not so braided, and then near the coast they are not so braided. So there's plenty of places for paddling, and especially during the summer. So the plan is to try and get this finished before spring. I haven't got long, but there's actually not an enormous amount to do now. Building the mold was the biggest issue because I hadn't done that before, and I've already got to the point where I'm going to make a whole bunch of modifications to the mold that I've made, or start over again and make a new one, because I want to make a number of these things, and I'm going to probably sell some of them. But I've already got new ideas for modifications that I want to make, and eventually I want to make the original style of this canoe, which is the cedar plank and canvas version of the Prospector, which is the more traditional style. So at the end of this video I'm just going to tack on some pictures to show you what the end product looks like, And I'm also going to tack on a little bit of a video which shows you just how strong fabric and frame canoe or kayak actually is. There's a guy has made a little video that he's uploaded to YouTube where he's beating the hell out of the fabric cover with a hammer just to show you how strong these things are, that they can take quite a bit of a beating. One of the big benefits of these canoes is that they are super light. They're ultra light, way lighter than fiberglass or carbon fiber or Kevlar or the old traditional wood and canvas ones, which are the heavier, lighter than aluminium probably. I would think they're lighter than aluminium. So that's one of the big benefits that I'm looking at, because even though there's not a lot of portaging required on the rivers around here, when I do have to portage, I don't want to hump a huge heavy canoe plus a backpack at the same time. I've also decided that I'm shifting from like hiking camping to canoe camping now, because I'm getting older. I'm in my almost mid-50s now, and anyone who's reached that age will realize that your body doesn't hold up as well, and that things start to ache and pain a little bit, and carrying heavy packs and backpacking becomes more difficult. So one of the important things about a canoe is that you still get to go outdoors, but you get to take more gear, way more gear with you. If I remember rightfully, a canoe can hold about 1/4 of a ton of weight, which is of course way more than you can carry on a backpack. What that means is more food, better camping gear, and a few extra luxuries like a deck chair and fishing rods and stuff like that. So it makes things a little bit easier and more pleasurable for those of us who are getting a bit older, which is the main reason why I'm doing this now. So, like I said, the plan is to get this finished by spring, and then to get a bit used to it, and then right at the moment there is planning going on in the background for about a dozen of us, people from 4 different countries, 5 different countries including New Zealand. We're all going to canoe the Wanganui River in New Zealand, which is, I think, the longest navigable river in New Zealand, and it's in the North Island. We're going to canoe it for about 4 days and 3 nights, I think, in mid to late January 2018. So, of course, there will be a lot of footage from that uploaded to this channel for anybody who is curious about canoeing, and especially canoeing in New Zealand, what it's like. And that's through the Wanganui National Park as well, so the scenery is really beautiful there. So, that's my update. This is what I'm doing, and from now on there'll be more regular updates on the canoe building, and then once I finally launch, hopefully in spring or summer 2017 to 2018, and then there'll be a lot of video on me paddling and camping, a lot of day trips, and maybe a few trips that are overnighters or maybe even 2-nighters down all the rivers in Hawke's Bay, and then eventually farther afield to some of the lakes in New Zealand and so on. So thanks for watching, and to Mithras and Arsolus, hopefully that gives you an idea of where I'm up to so far. Just about finished the mold, which I need to start actually building the canoe, and I started buying the first bits of timber for building the actual frame itself. So within a couple of weeks max, I will have the first stringers laid down and the keelson. I've got the timber for the keelson, and then I'll be going through all of that in detail, tying the whole thing together, gluing it, and so forth. So thanks again, and thanks for tuning in, and see you in the next video.
I get a lot of questions from people about my skin-on frame. If you have a skin-on frame, you probably get some questions too. The main one is, how fragile is it? And I thought, since I'm going to reskin this boat, that I'd give it a little torture test. Now, this has the lightest ballistic nylon, I think, that you would put on a kayak, 7 ounces. It's not any kind of heavy duty or anything. So we'll start with the stick and see how that does. Pretty tough. A lot of hammer. That's pretty good too. Shit, there. This might cut it. Actually, this is not dull. This is pretty sharp. I bet I can use the point. Well, before we do that. Oh, there we go. So if you happen to be paddling and run into a pruning shear, you might watch out. How about, I know a screwdriver won't be much problem. There we go. But it doesn't, still just makes a little, come here, we zoom in on that. Just makes a little hole, it doesn't make a big, let's try it. I can't really, there we go. Okay, let's turn it over. Sort of like that. The machete was kind of cool. This side is sharp. We'll get on this side, I'm sure. There we go. Did put a little hole in it there, but not much of one. What else we got? Oh, claw hammer. Here's this side of the hammer. Try that with your fiberglass boat, sucker. Yeah, the claw hammer is making holes, but remember, this is 7 ounce too. Woo, this is fun.